let's talk about getting kids into university. Now, I'm of the view far too many of our youngsters go to university. 50% was that target from Tony Blair. Now, an awful lot of young people are going to university, getting a piece of paper in a subject not worth anything, which no employer wants, telling them they've got a degree and coming out with 50 grand plus worth of debt. But there is certainly a problem with certain kids from certain backgrounds getting into university. White working class pupils are being written off. Says who? Well, the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. Let's talk about this with Tony Breslin, former chief examiner of an exam board and author of Lessons from Lockdown. A very good afternoon to you, Tony.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. I've heard this white working class people's being written off by society thing. I mean, virtually every year for about 15 years, once they suddenly realised it was white kids who were doing worse rather than kids from ethnic minorities. But basically, Bridget Phillipson says, and this is ahead of A-level results day this Thursday and GCSE results day next Thursday, that it was a national disgrace that so many white working class peoples were unable to get the marks needed for university, and they don't get what they need to achieve and thrive. Why don't they?
Well, the underachievement of working class children for years and years, as long as the education system has existed, working class kids have not performed to their ability. And indeed, in every advanced education system in the world, you will find the underachievement of the most disadvantaged. So, you know, this isn't a new thing. I think what is good is that it has been recognised, and I think it causes us to think differently about diversity. Of course, we should think about diversity in terms of ethnicity, but not just ethnicity. You know, we have diversity in so many ways, and of course, in terms of income and family background and all of that.
But this is, are they being failed by the schools themselves, or is it if you've got, you know, if you're from a poor family, and particularly white working class family, your parents may be semi-literate themselves, they may not have had a good schooling themselves, they don't really care about school. We know there's a massive, you know, rate of children who just like barely return to school. They let you bunk off school. No one really cares. No one bothers reading to you. You're put in front of the telly. You're on your computer games until 2 in the morning. You're not given breakfast in the morning. And by the way, we're not talking about your ordinary working class families who do the best for their kids, but a lot of the kids who are failing are kids from families where the families are failing the kids. Or is it happening at the schools?
Well, it's not an either or. It really is all of the above. And I think, in fairness, you know, an awful lot of the vast majority of working class parents do all they can to help their children succeed. But working class children have always dealt with that range of issues. There are fewer books in the home. There isn't a culture of education. Their parents are less likely to have been successful in education terms themselves. And all of these things add together. They're kind of salami slices. And when you add them together, the chances of a child from a disadvantaged background progressing to university, even in spite of the 50% target and all of that, the reality is that as we've opened up access to university, what we find is even more middle-class children going to university.
Yeah, but again, are they going because they're middle class, or are they going because they've got the grades, because they've been able to function at school and they've got parents who care about their education? Because what is really interesting is ethnic minority children, again, some particular ethnic minority children, again, it suggests to me, this has all got sod all to do with ethnicity or race. It's usually to do with heritage and culture and family units. There are some, you know, Indian, Chinese kids, West African kids, they're doing really, really well at school. Afro-Caribbean kids, particularly boys, not so much. Bangladeshi kids, Pakistani kids, not so much. But other kids, there are groups of ethnic minorities who can be from the same economic group. They can be living on the same council estate, and their kids are doing well, and the white working class kids and some other ethnic minorities are doing badly. That fundamentally, I mean, have we got racist teachers who don't care about some of them, or is it down to, actually, it's not even what's happening in the schools, it is what's happening at home, and it's what's happening particularly, you know, with families?
It's an incredibly rich mix, and you're absolutely right. We need to stop talking about ethnic minority as if this is some kind of cohesive whole.
Yeah.
You know, different groups. What you do find in terms of some of the ethnic groups you've just identified is that the ethnic groups that underperform most in the system are those who are the most economically disadvantaged.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we find, my sociologist friends called it intersectionality. It's where these different things meet each other.
Yeah.
So it's where ethnicity and class and sometimes gender in some communities and so forth, when those things layer together, then actually what we see and continue to see is that particular groups of children are much less likely to progress.
And poverty and family background are two of the biggest indicators, aren't they? But again, we've seen whether it's targets at university or targets, whether it's job hiring for jobs at say the BBC or pretty much anywhere, a lot of targeting of ethnic minority kids to improve quote diversity. No one really very concerned about, white working class kids. Well, they look the same as the white middle class kids, so no one notices. But actually, they're being left on the scrap heap. And actually, when you look at the results, they're the ones who are doing the worst in their grades at school, at GCSE, not going on to do A-levels. Therefore, no chance of getting into university and perhaps starting a better life.
Well, I think most universities now are much more sensitive in how they address the issue of ensuring that they widen participation, that they get more young people from non-traditional backgrounds progressing into higher education. I think it's interesting. You started by saying you think that too many young people...
Yes, by a long way. It's a complete waste of their time.
Now, I'm going to enjoy disagreeing with you there because I don't think you can have too much education. I don't think you can be too learned, and I don't think being learned doesn't mean that that can't be...
I don't think they are getting an education. I think a lot of the courses at university are a complete waste of their time. I know people who've got kids. I know people who, when I was at university even, and it's a long time ago, they did virtually nothing, like one essay a term. You're not getting an education. Yeah. No, you're just getting drunk, or you're getting drunk and getting into debt. It's a waste of your time.
Well, look, I'm not going to endorse that on national TV, especially with one son at
I got drunk and got an education. It's worthwhile.
But what I think we should bear in mind is actually one of the things that university experience does, and it certainly did because I was the first in my family to go to university, is it opens you up to middle class networks and contacts and all the rest of it. Yep. Okay, and so let's not underrate that.
I understand that. My husband, again, he'd left school at 16, worked at a paper factory, went to uni later. Absolutely life-changing for him to go to university. In terms of the people he met and the aspiration and everything. And my own parents, grammar school, working class kids, went to. I absolutely understand that. However, at that time, people weren't getting into 50 grand's worth of debt to do it.
That's true, although it's a different issue. But here's the point, Julia. Very often, right, those who say too many kids are going to university have themselves been to university.
And expect their own children to.
Their parents went to university, their children are going to university, and their grandchildren are going to university. And what I find difficult about that is they're talking about other people's children.
No, here's my thing. Here's the key stat. Less than 50% of kids are able to get 5 basic GCSEs, a decent grade these days. And yet we think that those 50%, they're able to go to university. I think you're making university meaningless at that point. But I want to tack you on one other thing, because to hit apparently government diversity targets, and we've been hearing about this in America, and there's been lots of lawsuits about it. But figures from the admissions bodies UCAS show many sort of well-respected universities are accepting severely underperforming students, even those getting only 3 E's or DDE at university as at A level, into study pretty serious courses because they want to fulfil equality, diversity and inclusion targets. Now, that's an absolute nonsense. I don't care what colour your skin is. You should have to get the same grades to get on the same course, shouldn't you?
Well, there's of course, grades have to have integrity. And I'm sure that if we were to drill down into this data, we might find 1 or 2 courses at 1 or 2 universities where this is the case. But it is absolutely not the norm. You'll have a lot of nervous children on Wednesday evening waiting for that result.
I've got mine. Mine's getting hers on Thursday as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and our younger is getting his GCSEs. So let's not, by talking about soft grades or whatever, undermine the efforts that children are making.
No. Giving them soft grades undermines them. Not being honest about it. Being honest about anything doesn't undermine anyone.
I agree. But I think we have to look really carefully at the two debates we've had this morning.
Yeah.
On the one hand, the white working class boys not getting the grades, and then later saying the grades are too soft. We can't kind of have that both
No,
ways.
the answer is better parenting, better schooling, so the kids are getting the right grades and not lying to kids saying you're up to this when you're not. We know that the dropout rate when kids haven't got the grades from universities is sky high. They leave, no degree, massive debt, and another year or two not in the jobs market. I think we're selling our kids a lie. But Tony, it's been so interesting talking to you. You have such an interest, and I really, really hope you'll come back on again very, very soon. Former Chief Examiner, author of Lessons from Lockdown, Tony Breslin. About 30 seconds to Sam Armstrong to have his say on this.
Do you know, I just feel so sorry for young working class white kids who grow up in failing schools, on estates that are often ridden with bad influences by kids that are trying to lead them off into drugs, into crime, and all sorts of nonsense that makes it really, really tough to grow up as a kid. To then come to the end of your education and to be told by the system that you are worthless, that you're a problem, that you've privileged, you've had it all easy, and everyone else has had it tougher. It must be sickening to reach adulthood and be told that. It's
no wonder,
so awful.
No wonder
and
so
evil
many
and
are so
wrong.
angry about it. Exactly.